Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Texas AMA's podcast. My name is Alisha Gupta, and I'm currently serving in 2022 and 2023 as the chapter president here at UT Austin. This podcast serves as a place for students around the nation interested in marketing or marketing related fields to have the opportunity to hear insights from industry professionals, companies that they may be interested in working with, and professors who have mastered the balance between in-class expertise and hands-on experience. For corporations, Texas AMA brings over 25 companies a semester to speak with our students in person and virtually about the dexterity of a marketer across industries and what a career in marketing can result in. And this podcast, as well as any relevant links, will be posted soon on YouTube and Spotify. So be sure to check out texasama.org for the next release of the podcast, as well as follow us on Instagram at TexasAMA to keep updated with companies we bring in. Going on to our guest speaker for today, Sean describes himself as someone that reinvents his career every few years. Otherwise, he would get bored. His LinkedIn bio reads, grows business, wins customers, talent management in the experience economy, proven entrepreneur and enterprise executive, multi-billion-dollar accountability, operates at the intersection of human and digital. And Sean McDonald's Twitter bio reads, PwC Experience Center, Dell exec alum, US Navy vet, UT Longhorn, father and husband of Liz McDonald, fan of the Beatles, Batman, opinions are mine, and enjoy. Well, with that, let's hear more from Sean McDonald. Hi,
Hi, everybody.
Professor. Awesome to have you on.
It's great to be here. Thank you for including me.
Of course, we're super excited. This, as I mentioned, was only our second episode of Texas AMA's podcast, and we're really focusing right now on professors and people who not only teach in the professional and educative world, but also have a career outside of that and are able to balance the two and bring their expertise back into the classroom. So we're super excited to have you on today. And with that, we'll just dive into some of the questions that we have.
Let's do it.
Perfect. So, first off, we know that you have a very unique background, as your bio stated. You started off at UT Hookham as a finance major at McCombs, but shortly after, I believe, you moved to the U.S. Naval Officer Candidate School and soon became a lieutenant, where it looks like you were working on operations, supply chain related tasks. So, how did that change come about, or was it more of a natural progression for you?
Yeah. As you mentioned, I was a finance undergrad. Actually, I had a double major. It was finance and international business.
Okay.
And I graduated in 1986, so a long time ago, from undergrad. And at that point in time, I thought I was going to go into, I'll say, a traditional finance job, like
Mhm.
banking or maybe other capital markets. And a couple things happened that changed my mind. One was there was a huge, and this was mostly in the state of Texas, but during that time, there was a huge financial crisis in the sense that a lot of failures and consolidations happening in banking. And because of that, I remember certain banks, which actually no longer exist, or they're bought up by some other banks, would come and interview about 20 students and maybe hire, say, 8. And as I was starting to interview in like late junior year and first semester of senior year, that number went down to, we're coming to talk to 2 students and we might hire 1.
Wow.
So the competition got really hard. The other thing, as I was looking at those type of positions, they all had a like 18-month to 24-month training period. And it was like a rotational period that you'd work inside this financial company and you'd learn a lot of different pieces of it. And I was restless. And I thought, I don't want to sign up for doing training for 2 years to figure out if this is what I want to be doing. And
Right.
part of it was the reason I was restless, I 4 years of school, I was ready to sort of go make my mark, go do something. So I was looking for accountability, responsibility, as soon as possible. And at about the same time that all this was happening, the U.S. Navy was expanding and growing. This was just a period in U.S. history where this was happening. And they came to University of Texas and a few other business schools, and they were looking for people that had business degrees to run a certain aspect of the U.S. Navy. So that's how sort of the Navy came up on my radar, and
Yeah.
banking and other financial type jobs went down. So it just sort of happened. But what the Navy offered me, and I was very appreciative of, is it said, okay, you're going to get accountability, responsibility fast in 4 months. They lived up to that. The second is you're going to have a variety of jobs because we're going to move you around, not just geographically, but responsibility. And I was looking for that as well. And the other piece of it is I was very interested. I had lived overseas before coming to UT, was a chance to travel international again. And they said, you definitely will travel international.
Yeah.
So they lived up on all those things. And that was my first real job. And I spent 7 years doing that.
Wow. Yeah, and I think it like goes to show that a lot of people will come in and say, there's not one straight line path, and you can kind of hop around to different companies, figure out where you fit in with the job field, with business itself, since it's so huge. But I think you take that even one step further in saying, you can start at business and go to the Navy and do that business operations there, or even learn to get that accountability and responsibility faster, and really, really jump around more to where you're pushing yourself to really figure out what you want outside of just, some of the main clickers that people are looking for today, which is usually like location and compensation, or job name, brand, and things like that, where it's like, what am I tangibly getting out of this experience that should be prioritized, especially when times are changing so rapidly then and now itself. So I think that perspective is really valuable to have, and good for our students to hear that there is not one straight path, even if that's what may look prevalent with the peers around you.
Yeah, and I think today compared to back 30 plus years ago, there was an expectation in society, and society could have been like your family, your teachers as well. It's like, okay, there are some, I'll say, proven paths.
Right.
And I mean, if you wanted a job in finance or marketing or something like that, then there was, and continue to be, certain brands that come and recruit at the University of Texas. Terrific brands, great places to start your career and potentially spend your entire career. But with the advent of more small startups and entrepreneurial and nonprofit versus for-profit, different industries, I think there's more permission to do it your way.
Yeah.
And to get some experience that you have an interest in, or be a part of, as you said, maybe a brand that you have identity or passion around, or an industry or their mission. That's more important than to say, hey, I went and I worked at these 3 companies and they're all great companies, but I don't know, if you're miserable at the end of that time period,
yeah,
you're not much better off.
Yeah, and especially at the end of COVID, or when people started reintroducing, what we called normal life back then, back into the life of going out. But at that time period, a lot of people started reflecting and saying, there is more to life than just, what the job says it is out to be, and really what you're feeling internally and how you're doing in the job, and what you want to explore, whether that be, I want a startup experience so I can get more hands-on experience early on in my college career, which I know is the advice that I give a lot of freshmen and sophomore that come to me saying, I can't get a job at the big firms. What do I do for the summer? And I always say, like, I really valued my smaller company experience, just because I had so much more ownership over a lot more tasks. And so when I'm talking to recruiters, I'm able to say, this is what the company does, but this is what I was able to contribute to that company in just 3 months alone. And so I think now experience shows a lot more than just name. But with that, you're always bouncing around trying to find new experiences, trying to enhance your toolkit. I remember before going to Deloitte for consulting, you actually went back to UT Austin to get your MBA with the focus on both marketing and entrepreneurship. So at the time, why did you think an MBA would be of help to you? I know a lot of people who do an undergrad in business question this.
Yeah, and I still get that question a lot. It's like, should I go should I go get an MBA? Is it worth it?
Yeah.
Because it is opportunity costs, and it's, tuition you got to pay as well. And back then, the choices for UT MBAs they only had two programs. So it was the full-time program. So you applied, you were a full-time student for 2 years. You were on their track. And there was the executive MBA, which was you were an executive and you were coming back 1 week in a month and you were getting your MBA that way. There was no nights program. There was no the Dallas or the Houston satellite
Yeah.
programs. So the good news is that McCombs opened the portfolio and thought about, well, there's a lot of different ways that people would like to get an MBA that are interested, and one size doesn't fit all. However, that size for me back then fit. I mean, I was going to get my MBA, and the reason why I was going to do it was I was leaving the military, which is public sector, a totally different way of life, and I didn't necessarily know about the right career or the next step for myself. And I felt that my skills for what private sector would be looking for were a little bit rusty. So I was, I knew how to be a great naval officer and operate in the U.S. Navy, but I didn't necessarily know how to what the jobs were and how to be successful in the jobs in different brands. So it was a transition play for me,
Yeah.
and I looked at a lot of schools. I wasn't planning to come back to UT. I was actually looking at mostly schools on the East Coast, and I came back to UT because at that point in time, UT improved their MBA program by a couple ways. One is they pretty much required work experience, because before then, and I knew some people that did this, is that as you graduated from UT, let's say you had an engineering or business or fine arts, whatever it be, and then you rolled over directly into an MBA.
Right.
And the caliber of sort of the student body wasn't as strong as compared to other top 20 programs. So they paid attention, they changed that. The other thing is, in a good way, I think they became more selective and looked beyond the borders of Texas to find the best students. So I wanted to be in an environment where I was going to be challenged and learn from others, not just because of you had a Texas driver's license, but more importantly that maybe where you went to undergrad, or the work experience that you had, and sort of the diversity in both thinking and background that were brought into McCombs. And so that was the reason I got there. So it made a lot of sense for me. I planned it for about 2 years before I did it. So it wasn't a sort of last minute, it's like, I got nothing better to do, let me go get my MBA.
Yeah.
And it was something I even thought of when I was an undergraduate, is postgraduate right for me? And it depended where I would be at my point in life. So for me as a transition, it made a lot of sense, and it delivered on what I needed. For some people are saying, I love my job, I love where I work, and I'm, well respected in my work. Should I go get an MBA? And lots of times I say no, because things are working out for you. What you'll get for an MBA is, yes, additional skills and capabilities and everything else, but that can also be learned in the work environment. And depending on your appetite for what you want to learn and where you want to learn it and how you want to learn it, that could determine, do I come back to the classroom, or do I maybe stay out in the quote unquote real world and pick that up.
Yeah, I think for me, especially since I'm in McCombs right now studying marketing, and an MBA could be in the future of my career, I think the biggest question I had for myself is, one, is there going to be that transitionary period, and do I wait for that transitionary period to then plan on going and doing an MBA? Which what it seems like you're saying is, you were facing some sort of transition in your life, whether it be career, job, or even opportunities that you wanted to open up for yourself, that made MBA sound more appealing. But then also too, how do you want to learn the information that you are learning? And I think that's like a really interesting point to reflect on, and for all of our students to reflect on as well, is like, some people study and learn really well in the classroom. and they
Hmm.
gather a lot of knowledge, and MBA obviously helps you put that into practice. And some
Yeah.
people just need to go do it in the quote unquote real world to be able to understand and grasp concepts more conceptually and better. And then there's obviously a mix of the two, but I think where I found
Right.
myself standing is, McCombs does a really great job of like cases and practicing that
Hmm.
hands-on experience when they bring in professors like yourself. So you're able to then mimic,
Hmm.
what it feels like to be in the real world. Like currently I'm working with 3 clients for 3 of my classes as my final project. And I had never thought that I'd get that type of opportunity. Was it not for the marketing courses that I'm in right now. So I think it just really goes down to how do you absorb information and what type of opportunities are you looking to expand yourself towards.
Yeah, that's a great point in terms of what you're experiencing right now in your classes. There was a stark contrast between my UT BBA and my UT MBA. And by that,
Right.
and it wasn't because one was a finance major or finance and international business versus marketing entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
It was the way that the classes were taught in my BBA was very much textbook,
Okay.
which was okay, you bought the textbook at the co-op and you read the chapters, and
Yeah.
then the professor would come in and give, additional key information that maybe wasn't in the textbook in order for you to understand the concepts, right? So if
Yeah.
you're talking about, well, I mean, within market sizing, if you're talking about how to segment a market, you'd read about it, they would sort of talk about it, but there wasn't any application. So
Interesting.
cases weren't there. Working our brands coming into the classroom, not as much. And it wasn't because like UT wasn't doing a good job. It was just sort of that was the mode of teaching back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I came back and got my MBA, the mode of learning and teaching, which MBAs sort of were earlier to adopt than undergraduate work, was exactly what I wanted and signed up for, which was
Yeah.
that practical application. Like I don't remember buying a textbook in my MBA. Maybe I had one or two, but it was all about sort of course materials and readings and things that were contextually relevant, usually pretty recent, and you knew why you were, essentially learning this information. And you didn't always know how to apply it, but that's what you were learning in class.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of the shift that we've made in the university that I could see really prevalently is just that there's so much hands-on experience now, which is awesome because then, especially with recruiting and just assimilating to your internship or when you are looking to enter the job force, it makes it a lot less intimidating. But
Mm-hmm.
nonetheless, there's going to be companies that are unique in the style of doing things, who require a student to be able to adapt on the job and learn something in a manner that they haven't learned before, and challenge the student in some way that perhaps school can't teach you all of the things that you'll be able to encounter when you are in that job force. Personally, from your background, Professor, I'm really intrigued by your working with Ants Eye View. I am actually
Mm-hmm.
currently working on a documentary right now, and it surrounds the idea of media and how people with powerful presence, influencers, politicians, um, people who are creating films, pretty much anyone with a really powerful presence and has powerful media surrounding that presence, the question around, do they have the responsibility to use that media for some sort of social good because you have the power to influence so many people. So that's the documentary, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of adjacent, not so adjacent. I just know that Anti-View, as I remember, helps brands listen and engage with those online communities via social media. So I was just wondering if you could tell
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit about the work that you did there, about marketing
Sure.
in that role, and maybe even how it challenged you to kind of adapt a practice that you were learning either in your MBA or at school.
Sure. Sure. So Anti-View was a small consulting group that I helped start in 2009. And before Anti-View, I spent 12 years at Dell, here in Austin or Round Rock. And that's where I really got the opportunity to be in, I think, every marketing role that was available at Dell. I changed roles about once a year. And it was a great environment for learning and applying that learning. So I'm very indebted for the time there. But the reason why I left is that a good friend of mine who was also at Microsoft at the time, we were at similar places in our lives. And what my last full-time job at Dell was, I was leading a team called Communities and Conversations. And this was actually sitting in the corporate communications role. And what we were identified is that there was a lot of voice of users, customers, and the web had changed then to Web 2.0. So democratization of data and voice had happened, where before the only way you could publish information is you'd have to have a pretty significant budget, right? Or you'd have to be a recognized news outlet. But now all of a sudden brands and fans of brands could have that. So that was the advent of online communities. This is before Facebook was made available to brands. So we started this business because we knew a lot of companies were also asking these questions of, hey, with this new media, how do I engage in this? How do I mean, sometimes the word would be take advantage of. We would say, no, you want to participate. And what does that look like? How do I do it and manage the financial risk, the legal risk? How do I operationalize it? What are the metrics that matter? So we taught brands how to do that. And so the brands that we were seeing this across all industries. So we were seeing it in financial services, credit card companies, insurance companies, packaged goods, hospitality, airlines, a lot of tech companies as well, both B2C and B2B. And they were all asking very similar questions. And so we said, well, we know the people that are at those brands right now that are smart and know how to help others. So we went and recruited them. And so we built this consultancy. It was a total of 35 people over 3 years. And we ended up selling it because there was a lot of interest, and we also had aspirations to do more and different to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and that's where I'm at now, or PwC. And so I helped start sort of their original digital marketing and different models of engagement with users in order to drive and deliver new experiences and products that brands ultimately would need.
Yeah, that is super unique. I think, as times are changing, and right now we can talk about AI and the spike in AI and how there's probably some company out there helping either people or users or corporations, beat that curve of the acceleration of artificial intelligence. But I think when times are changing, the point is to have people that are able to help adapt to those times and be able to help companies adapt to those times are not only super, profitable, but also super important for just us to be able to help as a society keep up with the technological expansion. So I think companies and majors and students who are working in those majors that can do that have a huge advantage. And I'm just curious, your background in consulting, has it been then used more towards like the finance major that you were learning, or entrepreneurship, or marketing, or kind of like a congregation of all of them? So in terms of how you've been able to apply it in actual real life, I think for Anside View, I could see a lot of the marketing concepts that I'm learning, come and be more present. Obviously, these majors and knowledge isn't working in silos, and all-rounded education is definitely of importance. But just from your perspective, what do you see coming out more when you're working in these consulting roles?
Yeah, I think I am fortunate that I've tackled a few different disciplines, finance and marketing as two of them, but a few others maybe informally as well, and things like organizational design, like how do you set up and how do you operate? So that would be maybe under management. Accounting as well. I am not an accountant, and accounting was my hardest class at McCombs, both undergrad and grad. And so it taught me a respect for accountants that have the sort of the discipline to stick with it. but I would say it tends to be on who is the audience. And so if the
Okay.
audience is a CMO, then yes, there's going to be both a combination of language and metrics and storytelling that will resonate better with a CMO than with a CFO, Chief Financial Officer. However, the advice I give to a lot of marketers, and I did not learn this at McCombs, I learned it on the job, but fortunately I had the the comfort with numbers. Is numbers are the language of business, and it doesn't matter what discipline you're in. So if you can tell your story or make your case or pitch your idea and you use numbers, it's more objective. So you take subjectivity out to a degree. It
Yeah.
also gives a broader audience when you're not just talking to creatives, but you're talking to people that don't have that aspect and they want to know, well, how will this work? And how much is it worth? How much is it going to cost? How do we know it's a success? Is that you use numbers to speak to that audience in a way where now they get past their sort of toll gate of I don't understand or this is just fluff more
Yeah.
towards, okay, now I understand the business value you're talking about. And now I can also get excited about the idea that you have of how you're going to do that. And it could
Yeah.
be like new product attributes. Well, why are you putting these new product attributes in? Okay, based on customer research, here's what we learned. There's numbers there. And from that customer research, here's what we tested. And here's the cost of putting in those new attributes. And here's what we think it'll do to pricing.
Yeah.
All sit in with the marketer's realm of responsibility as well. So my advice to any marketer, one is take a healthy amount of psychology and sociology because it's all about dealing with humans.
Yeah.
The other piece is don't shy away from numbers. Numbers are always going to be there, and it will make you much more significant. Much your information will go farther, and people will ask your advice. They won't just, they'll say, well, Alisha just told us that great story or just told us about what that opportunity was based on the research she's doing. And she then turned it into, okay, here's the opportunity we should go after and what it's worth.
Yeah.
You get people excited. You get people understanding about, the action that the brand should take.
I think that's awesome advice. And I wish I had heard that sooner for sure. Because I think going into the job force, we're told oftentimes as marketers that we are the creatives of business. And that is our
Mhm.
main job and that's our main field. And that's a lot of the impression that people have on us, even if that's not what we're actually studying in the classroom, which I learned very quickly. My classes are very, very analytical. And I
Yeah.
took one pricing marketing class, which was probably my favorite, but it was the most numbers that I've seen in any of my classes, minus maybe finance. So, I think with that advice, if it had come sooner to myself and to maybe some of the other students, which is why we want to air this podcast, it's super
Mhm.
helpful to just internalize and get rid of that imposter syndrome and know that a lot of a marketer's job does root in numbers when it comes to communicating to different audiences. So you're able to tie in the creative story with that analytical aspect and kind of make a picture that's more cohesive depending on who you are presenting to or just in general. So it's able to touch more people and explain to more people your idea versus, kind of stick to the stigma that marketing is simply only creative. And as
Right.
the quote that we're trying to get rid of, marketing is just color pencils.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
think that advice is phenomenal just to realize that if you are going to get into a job of marketing, this is what it's going to take to be able to, succeed to the max in the business world.
Yeah. And the good news is it's not like you learn all of it at McCombs. And
Yeah.
so the learning doesn't stop just because you graduate and now you're in the workforce. So you might find, and anybody might find is, okay, in that job, there might be somebody in your group, or maybe they're sitting in finance or, some more quantitative or analytical side of the business. Go take them to lunch. Go find out what he or she or they know. What are the key metrics? Because every business, has a culture, but they also then have maybe more
Yeah.
metrics that they pay more attention to. And that way you start to speak the language a little bit more. You learn the language, you start to speak the language. So you don't have to be an expert in it. You probably need to have somebody close by that is an expert.
Yeah.
and you saddle up with. And some of that might rub off. Some of it you might just sort of pick up on your own, and you might pick up and adapt as well. So
Yeah.
it does take time. It's not like one semester you just sort of go do it and you're done and you're great at it. But I think the big thing is don't shy away from it. Don't think it's somebody else's job.
Yeah, and I think that's again awesome advice for all of our students like listening out there, because the more we're able to grasp our head around that we do both sides of the coin, it'll
Mhm.
be so much better and so much more beneficial. And I think teamwork is the best way to go about it, especially when we're here at McCombs and you have so many people surrounding you with different expertise, different interests, willing to share and learn and grow with each other. Take advantage of it and
Mhm.
combine
Yeah,
expertise and learn from each other, not only in the classroom but outside as well.
yeah,
Thank you so
absolutely.
much, Professor. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Any last words for our audience out there today?
So the term professor is new for me. So every time you sort of said it, I'm wondering who you're talking to. As you know, I just started teaching this spring semester full time. Or well,
Yeah.
actually, I have two courses that I'm teaching. So I'm still working my day job and I'm doing teaching as well. And I would say for anybody that has an interest in that, um, I decided that one day I would come back, ideally to McCombs and to UT, and give back for what I got. And I had some terrific professors, instructors, lecturers, both in undergrad and graduate. Some I was able to keep in touch with, some long gone. But when I saw them up at the front of the room and what they're able to do, I said, I want to be able to do that. And I knew it wasn't me. I knew I had to maybe go get some experience. I knew I had some life to live as
Mhm.
well, because I think a lot of it is the experience that you bring back in addition to the knowledge.
Yeah.
So if anybody's thinking about that, I'm another example that it does happen. And fortunately, the University of Texas is very encouraging to bring expertise and experience back into the classroom. And you do not have to be alum also, but it is nice to be back where I gained so much and I'm so grateful for.
Awesome. And with that, we can round it off with the hook'em as always. But UT is an amazing place to be and learn from and grow from. And make sure that you follow along with this podcast as well at texasama.org or on Instagram at TexasAMA. We bring in so many wonderful, skillful, and knowledgeable professors and company heads to talk to our students and just air it out for giving free advice basically on what you can do to become the best possible person and student in and outside of the classroom. And if you have any questions about careers and marketing events that AMA organizes or a company that is interested in coming in and speaking to our students, please feel free to email us at ama@ut@gmail.com. Thank you so much. And that is all we have for today.